The night before she was supposed to belong to someone else, Emily Parker disappeared into the forbidden forest and left behind the only future everyone had planned for her. The cold wind moved through the tall pine trees as she ran deeper into the darkness, her white cloak brushing against the snow-covered ground. Behind her was a life where every decision had already been made. Ahead of her was a forest filled with uncertainty, but for the first time in years, uncertainty felt like freedom. Emily had always known what she was born to be. An Omega from a small mountain pack, she was raised to believe that her value came from the role others expected her to fulfill. Her family told her the claim ceremony would bring honor. The elders told her it would secure peace between powerful groups. Everyone spoke about her future as if her own voice did not matter. But they never asked what Emily wanted. They never asked if she was ready to give her entire life to a stranger. That was why she ran. Not because she hated her destiny, but because she wanted the chance to discover who she was before someone else decided for her. As the moonlight guided her through the frozen forest, Emily finally slowed her steps. The silence around her was overwhelming, yet peaceful. She placed a hand over her heart and took a deep breath. For the first time, no one was telling her where to go or what to become. She was simply Emily, a young woman searching for a future that belonged to her. Far away from the village, deep within the same forest, another person walked beneath the silver moon. Adrian Blackthorn, the Alpha King of Blackthorn Kingdom, had spent years carrying the weight of a crown. To his people, he was a symbol of strength and authority. But behind the royal title was a man who understood loneliness more than anyone knew. During his journey through the northern forest, Adrian noticed something unusual. The quiet wilderness felt different, as if a hidden story had entered his path. He did not know that the person he would soon meet would challenge everything he believed about destiny. When Emily reached a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, she looked up at the endless sky and wondered if she had made the right choice. Fear still followed her, but beneath that fear was something stronger. Hope. She did not know that her escape was about to lead her toward the one person who would change the meaning of destiny itself. She did not know that the Alpha King was closer than she imagined. And she certainly did not know that the man behind the crown would be the first person to see her not as an Omega, not as a responsibility, but as someone whose choice truly mattered. Under the frozen moonlight, two paths were moving toward the same moment. One woman was running from a life chosen for her. One king was searching for something he had never found. And the forest was about to bring them together. The forest had always been a place where people whispered about mysteries, but on that cold winter night, it became the place where two completely different worlds began to move toward each other. Emily Parker walked carefully between the towering pine trees, feeling the weight of every step. She had escaped the life that others created for her, but she knew the forest would not be easy. The cold air surrounded her, and the endless snow made every direction look the same. Yet, she continued forward because returning was no longer an option. Emily had spent her entire life being told that an Omega should accept what was decided for her. She was expected to be grateful, silent, and obedient. But deep inside, there had always been a quiet voice reminding her that she was more than a role assigned by tradition. She was a person with dreams, fears, and hopes of her own. As she rested beneath an ancient tree, Emily noticed small signs that she was not alone. The forest felt alive, not threatening but watchful. She wondered if she had finally reached the edge of everything familiar. Meanwhile, Adrian Blackthorn continued through the northern woods, unaware that the person he had searched for without knowing was only moments away. The Alpha King was used to people seeing only his title. They bowed because of his crown. They listened because of his power. But very few people ever saw the man behind the throne. Adrian had spent years protecting his kingdom while carrying a loneliness he never spoke about. Many believed an Alpha King had everything, but Adrian knew that having everything did not mean having someone who truly understood him. As he traveled through the forest, he noticed something unusual near a quiet clearing. A small trail of footprints crossed the fresh snow. Someone had been there recently. Adrian followed the path and eventually saw a figure sitting beneath the trees. For a moment he stopped. The young woman looked exhausted, but there was something different about her. She did not appear like someone searching for attention or power. She looked like someone who had chosen uncertainty because staying had become impossible. Emily noticed him and immediately became cautious. The stranger standing before her carried a presence unlike anyone she had ever met. His calm expression and confident posture revealed that he was not an ordinary traveler. But there was something unexpected in his eyes. There was no judgment, no demand, only curiosity and concern. "Are you lost?" Adrian asked gently. Emily hesitated before answering. She had learned that trust was not something given easily. "I am looking for a place where I can decide my own future," she said. Her words surprised him. Most people ask the Alpha King for protection, wealth, or favor. This woman asked for something much simpler. She wanted the freedom to choose. Adrian looked at her and felt something shift inside him. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But he knew one thing. She was different. And for the first time in many years, the Alpha King felt that the forest had not brought him a problem to solve. It had brought him someone he was meant to understand. Under the quiet winter sky, Emily and Adrian stood between two paths. One woman was searching for a life of her own. One king was discovering that true connection was not built through power, but through respect. Neither of them knew how much this meeting would change their futures. But the forest had already made its choice. The morning light slowly reached the frozen forest, covering the snow-covered trees with a soft golden glow. For Emily Parker, waking up in the wilderness should have been frightening. She had left behind everything she knew, and she still did not know what waited beyond the trees. But for the first time in her life, she felt something she had almost forgotten: peace. The stranger from the night before had not demanded answers. He had not questioned why she ran or told her that she needed to return. Instead, Adrian Blackthorne had simply offered help and allowed her to decide what came next. That alone made him different from every alpha she had ever known. Emily watched him from a distance as he prepared a small shelter near the clearing. There was a quiet confidence about him, but not the kind that made others feel powerless. It was the kind that made people feel safe. She found herself wondering who he truly was. Adrian noticed her curiosity but did not reveal his identity. For once, he wanted someone to see him without the weight of his crown. He wanted to know what it felt like to speak with someone who did not treat him differently because of his title. As they traveled through the forest together, Emily slowly began to trust him. Their conversations were simple at first. They talked about the weather, the mountains, and the small details of life beyond the palace walls. But with every conversation, Adrian discovered more about the woman walking beside him. Emily was not fragile. She was someone who had carried years of expectations and still chose kindness instead of bitterness. She stopped to help injured birds, gathered herbs for healing, and showed compassion toward every living thing around her. Adrian had met many people who wanted power, but he had rarely met someone who carried so much strength without seeking recognition. Emily also noticed things about Adrian that surprised her. Behind his calm voice was a man who carried many responsibilities. He knew the names of distant villages, remembered the concerns of his people, and thought about the future of his kingdom constantly. She began to realize that the stranger in the forest was not cold or distant. He was simply someone who had spent years hiding his own emotions behind a royal role. One evening, as they rested near a quiet stream, Emily looked at him and asked, "Why are you helping me?" Adrian was silent for a moment. It was a simple question, but the answer felt important. "Because everyone deserves the chance to choose their own path," he finally said. Those words stayed with Emily. She had spent so long believing that power always came with control. But this man showed her another possibility. Maybe strength could exist with kindness. Maybe an alpha could protect without taking away freedom. As the days passed, the connection between them grew stronger. Neither of them understood why being near each other felt so natural. Neither knew that an ancient bond was slowly awakening beneath the surface. To Emily, Adrian was simply the first person who saw her as more than an omega. To Adrian, Emily was the first person who looked beyond the crown and found the man beneath it. Deep in the winter forest, two strangers were becoming something neither expected. A runaway omega was learning that trust could exist. An alpha king was discovering that the person he had been waiting for was not someone who needed to follow him, but someone who could stand beside him. The quiet days in the winter forest had changed something inside Emily Parker. When she first stepped beneath the frozen trees, she believed she was escaping from a future that had already been decided. She thought freedom meant being completely alone, far away from every expectation placed upon her. But now, walking beside Adrian Blackthorne, she began to understand that freedom was not only about running away. Sometimes it was about finding someone who respected the person you truly were. Each day revealed another side of the mysterious man who traveled with her. Adrian never asked her to explain her past before she was ready. He never treated her like someone who needed to be controlled. Instead, he listened. For Emily, that simple kindness felt unfamiliar. She had spent years surrounded by people who spoke about her future, but rarely asked about her feelings. Adrian was different. He wanted to know her thoughts, her dreams, and the small things that made her smile. One afternoon, while they walked through a snowy valley, Emily noticed how carefully Adrian observed the land around them. He knew every path, every village, and every hidden corner of the mountains. She finally asked the question that had been growing in her mind. "Who are you really?" Adrian stopped for a moment. The answer he had avoided was finally standing between them. He knew that hiding the truth could not continue forever. "My name is Adrian Blackthorne," he said calmly. "I am the Alpha King of Blackthorne Kingdom." The words changed the atmosphere instantly. Emily looked at him in silence. The man who had shared simple conversations with her, who had helped her without asking for anything, was the ruler everyone spoke about. The person she had trusted was not a traveler searching through the forest. He was the most powerful alpha in the region. A wave of uncertainty crossed her heart. She remembered every story she had heard about powerful alphas and every warning about losing her freedom. For a moment, she wondered if she had simply escaped one expectation only to find another. Adrian saw the concern in her eyes. But instead of stepping closer or demanding that she accept his truth, he gave her space. "I know what my title means to people," he said. "But I hope you know that the man you met here was always real." Emily looked at him carefully. She remembered the days in the forest. She remembered how he protected her choices, how he listened, and how he never once treated her like something he owned. The crown explained his power, but it did not erase the kindness she had already seen. "Why did you not tell me before?" she asked softly. Adrian looked toward the snowy mountains. "Because I wanted one person to see me without seeing the crown first." His honesty surprised her. For the first time, Emily realized that Adrian carried his own burdens. He was not only a king. He was a person who wanted to be understood. As the moon rose above the forest, Emily stood beside the Alpha King with a new understanding. She was still unsure of what the future held. She still needed time to process the truth. But one thing had changed. She no longer saw Adrian as a powerful figure who might take away her choice. She saw him as the first person who had given her one. And neither of them knew that the bond connecting their paths was about to reveal a truth that would change everything. The truth about Adrian Blackthorne changed the way Emily Parker looked at the world around her, but it did not change the way she saw the man who had walked beside her through the frozen forest. She had expected a powerful Alpha King to be distant, demanding, and impossible to understand. Instead, she found someone who carried the weight of an entire kingdom, while quietly hoping that someone would see him as more than a title. The days after Adrian revealed his identity were filled with questions. Emily was still careful, still trying to understand what his presence meant for her future. The fear she once felt toward powerful alphas had not disappeared overnight. But every moment with Adrian reminded her that this situation was different. He never spoke as if she belonged to him. He spoke as if her choices mattered. One morning, as the first light reached the snowy valley, Adrian told Emily that they needed to return toward Blackthorne Kingdom. The journey would not be simple. Many people were searching for the missing Omega, and rumors had already spread throughout the surrounding lands. Emily knew that returning meant facing the life she had escaped. It meant standing before the same traditions that once made her feel powerless. Yet something inside her had changed. She was no longer the frightened girl who ran into the forest hoping to disappear. She was someone who had discovered her own strength. During their journey back, Adrian continued to surprise her. He asked for her opinions about the villages they passed. He listened when she shared ideas about helping others. He valued her thoughts even though she had no royal title. Emily slowly realized that the Alpha King was not searching for someone who would simply stand beside his throne. He was searching for someone whose heart could stand beside his own. One evening as they rested near the edge of the forest, something unusual happened. Emily felt a strange warmth in the air around them, as if the world itself had become quieter for a moment. Adrian noticed it too. Neither of them understood what was happening, but both felt that something important was awakening. Adrian looked at Emily with a mixture of surprise and wonder. "Have you ever felt like you were meant to find something you were never searching for?" he asked. Emily thought about her journey. She had entered the forest trying to escape a future chosen by others. Now she was standing beside the one person who made her question everything she believed about destiny. "Maybe," she replied softly, "some things find us when we stop running." Those words stayed with Adrian. For years, he believed destiny was a responsibility placed upon him as an alpha king. But Emily showed him that destiny could also be a choice. When they finally reached the borders of Blackthorn Kingdom, Emily looked toward the palace in the distance. It no longer represented a place where her voice would disappear. It represented a challenge she was ready to face. Adrian noticed her expression and asked if she was afraid. Emily took a deep breath and looked ahead. "I am afraid," she admitted. "But I am not running anymore." For the first time, Adrian saw the true strength of the woman beside him. Not because she was an Omega. Not because of any bond they might share. But because she had found the courage to choose her own path. Neither of them knew what awaited them inside the kingdom. They did not know how many people would question their connection or how much their lives were about to change. But they both understood one thing. The forest had not brought them together by accident. It had given them the chance to discover a bond built on trust before destiny revealed the rest. The gates of Blackthorn Kingdom stood before Emily Parker for the first time since she disappeared into the forest. The towering stone walls, the royal banners, and the endless halls beyond them represented everything she once feared. She remembered the night she left, when every path ahead seemed to belong to someone else. But as she walked beside Adrian Blackthorn, she realized something had changed. She was not returning as the Omega who ran away. She was returning as a woman who had discovered her own voice. The moment Emily entered the kingdom, whispers followed. Many people had heard stories about the missing Omega, who abandoned her arranged future. Some questioned her choices. Others wondered why the Alpha King himself had returned with her. Emily felt the weight of every glance, but she did not lower her eyes. The forest had taught her something important. Her worth was not decided by the opinions of others. Adrian noticed the way people looked at her, and for the first time the kingdom saw a different side of their Alpha King. He did not stand above Emily. He stood beside her. In front of the royal council, Adrian made his position clear. Emily Parker is not here because she was brought back. She is here because she chose to return. The room became quiet. Many had expected the Alpha King to speak about duty, tradition, and obligation. Instead, he spoke about respect. He explained that no bond, no title, and no ancient rule could replace a person's right to choose their own future. Emily listened carefully. She had spent years believing that powerful people only used their influence to control others. But Adrian was using his power to protect her freedom. That realization meant more than any promise. As the days passed, Emily began to understand the kingdom she had once feared. She walked through the villages surrounding the palace and saw the lives of the people Adrian worked so hard to protect. She noticed the way citizens respected him, not because they feared his position, but because they trusted his decisions. She also saw areas where the kingdom needed change. Instead of remaining silent, Emily shared her thoughts. Some were surprised that an Omega would speak so openly, but Adrian listened to every word. He valued her perspective because he saw the compassion behind it. One evening, Emily stood in the palace garden looking at the snow-covered paths. Adrian joined her quietly. "Do you regret coming back?" he asked. Emily looked toward the lights of the kingdom. She thought about the girl who had entered the forest believing she had no choices left. She thought about the person she had become. "No," she answered, "because I came back as myself." Adrian smiled softly. He knew that was the reason he respected her. Emily did not need a crown to prove her value. She did not need anyone to tell her she was important. She had discovered that truth on her own. As the moon rose above Blackthorn Kingdom, a new chapter began. The Omega who once ran from a future chosen by others was now standing in a place where her choices mattered. And the Alpha King who had spent years searching for a connection discovered that the person he found in the forest was not someone meant to follow his path. She was someone meant to walk beside him. The days following Emily Parker's return to Blackthorn Kingdom revealed a truth that surprised many people. The Omega who once disappeared into the forest was not the same person who walked through the palace gates. She no longer carried the fear that had controlled her choices. She still had questions. She still faced uncertainty. But she had something she never had before: the confidence to decide her own path. As preparations began for the future of the kingdom, many expected Emily to simply accept the role others had imagined for her. They expected her to follow ancient traditions without question. But Emily understood that becoming Luna was not about wearing a title. It was about serving the people and staying true to herself. Adrian Blackthorn watched her carefully, not because he wanted to control her decisions, but because he admired the strength she showed every day. He saw how she spoke with villagers, how she listened to their concerns, and how she noticed the small details that others ignored. The royal advisors began to recognize something they had never expected. Emily did not seek influence for herself. She used every opportunity to help others. One afternoon, Emily visited a village near the edge of the kingdom. The people there had once believed that an Omega from a small pack could never understand their struggles. But when she sat with families, listened to their stories, and offered ideas to improve their daily lives, their opinions slowly changed. She did not demand respect. She earned it through compassion. When Adrian heard about her actions, he felt a sense of pride he could not describe. For years, he had searched for someone who could stand beside him as an equal. He finally understood that the person he needed was not someone who would simply accept his world. She was someone who could help him create a better one. That evening, Adrian and Emily walked through the palace gardens beneath the winter sky. The snow reflected the soft light of the moon, creating a peaceful silence around them. "Do you still believe destiny is something that controls us?" Adrian asked. Emily looked across the garden where she once felt like a stranger. "I used to," she answered. "I thought destiny was a path someone else created for me. But now I think destiny is only an opportunity. What we choose to do with it is what matters." Adrian smiled because those words reflected everything he had learned from her. Their connection was no longer built on uncertainty. It was built on trust. The bond between them felt stronger, but neither of them needed it to decide their future. They had already chosen to understand each other. They had already chosen respect. Meanwhile, the kingdom slowly began preparing for a new era. Some traditions remained, but old beliefs about Omegas and Alphas started to change. People began seeing that strength was not measured by status or power. It was measured by character. Emily stood beside Adrian not because she was forced to, but because she believed in the person he was. And Adrian stood beside Emily not because destiny demanded it, but because he respected the woman who had changed the way he viewed leadership. Together, they were creating something neither of them had expected to find in the frozen forest. Not just a bond, not just a future, a choice they made together. The true measure of a leader is not found in the power they hold, but in the lives they choose to change. As winter slowly passed over Blackthorn Kingdom, Emily Parker began to see the impact of the path she had chosen. The girl who once entered the forest hoping to escape her future was now helping shape a future for others. But she never forgot the reason she ran in the first place. She never wanted a title. That erased who she was. She wanted a life where her voice mattered. As the days went by, Emily continued learning what it meant to become Luna. She studied the traditions of the kingdom, but she also questioned the ones that no longer served the people. Some advisors were surprised by her ideas. They had expected an Omega to simply follow the customs passed down through generations. Instead, Emily brought a different kind of strength. She asked questions. She listened. She searched for solutions that considered everyone. Adrian Blackthorn noticed every change. The Alpha King had spent years believing that protecting his kingdom meant carrying every burden alone. But Emily showed him that leadership was not about standing above others. It was about standing with them. Her kindness did not make her weak. It made her someone people trusted. One morning, Adrian invited Emily to walk through the royal grounds beyond the palace walls. The area was filled with old trees, frozen streams, and paths covered in fresh snow. It reminded Emily of the forest where their story began. "Do you ever miss the person you were before all of this?" Adrian asked. Emily looked toward the distant mountains. She thought about the night she ran, the fear she carried, and the uncertainty she faced. "I do not miss being afraid," she answered. "But I am grateful for the person that fear helped me become." Adrian understood her words. He had changed too. Before meeting Emily, he believed an alpha king had to always appear unshakable. He believed showing doubt meant showing weakness. But Emily taught him that honesty could create stronger connections than perfection. Together, they began preparing for the day when Emily would officially step into her role beside him. Yet neither of them viewed it as a simple ceremony or a royal duty. It was a promise built from everything they had experienced together. It was built from trust formed in the forest, conversations beneath the winter sky, and the choice they continued making every day. Across the kingdom, people started to see a different kind of future. The old belief that an omega could only follow began to fade. The idea that an alpha had to rule without emotion began to disappear. Emily and Adrian showed them something new. Strength could be gentle. Leadership could be compassionate. A bond could be powerful without taking away freedom. As evening arrived, Emily stood on the palace balcony overlooking Blackthorn Kingdom. Months earlier, she had looked at the world from a completely different place. She had been a woman running away from a destiny she did not choose. Now she was someone helping create a destiny that belonged to her. Adrian joined her quietly, standing beside her as the kingdom lights appeared below. Neither of them needed to speak. They both understood how far they had come. The forest had not taken Emily away from her future. It had led her toward a future where she could finally be herself. And the Alpha King who once searched for a bond discovered something far greater. He found someone who did not complete him because she was destined to. She completed the journey because they chose to walk it together. The greatest journeys are not measured by how far someone travels, but by how much they discover about themselves along the way. For Emily Parker and Adrian Blackthorn, the path that began with uncertainty had become a story of courage, trust, and a choice that changed an entire kingdom. The day Emily entered the forest, she believed she was leaving her future behind. She believed the only way to protect herself was to disappear from a world that had already decided who she should become. But the forest gave her something she never expected. It gave her the chance to find her own voice. Years of tradition had taught Emily that being an omega meant accepting the path others created for her. Yet through every challenge, she discovered that her true strength was never about fighting against the world. It was about understanding her own worth. As Luna beside Adrian, Emily continued to lead with the same compassion that guided her from the beginning. She remembered what it felt like to be unheard, and because of that, she made sure others would not feel the same. She created new opportunities for omegas throughout the kingdom, and encouraged people to believe that their value was never determined by their role or status. Adrian watched the kingdom change, but he also saw how much he had changed himself. The Alpha King who once believed responsibility meant carrying everything alone finally understood the importance of partnership. He no longer saw leadership as standing above everyone else. He saw it as creating a place where people could stand together. One peaceful evening, Emily and Adrian returned to the forest where their story began. The trees stood tall beneath the silver moon, and the quiet snow-covered paths reminded them of the uncertain night when they first met. Emily looked around and smiled. "I thought this forest was where my old life ended," she said. "But it was actually where I found myself." Adrian looked at the same path where he had discovered her. He remembered the woman who was searching for freedom, and the moment he realized she was unlike anyone he had ever known. "You were never someone who needed to be saved," he said. "You were someone who needed the chance to choose." Emily smiled because those words represented everything she had hoped for. She had not found happiness because someone gave her a new destiny. She found happiness because she was finally allowed to create one. Their bond was powerful, but it was not the reason they stayed together. Their respect, trust, and understanding were what made their connection meaningful. As they returned to Blackthorn Kingdom, they carried with them a new vision for the future. A future where traditions could grow, where leaders could listen, and where every person had the freedom to choose their own path. The story of the Omega who entered the forest and the Alpha King who found her became a reminder throughout the lands. True strength was not found in control. True leadership was not found in fear. And true love was not something forced by destiny. It was something two people chose with open hearts. Emily had escaped a future she never wanted, only to discover a future she could finally embrace. Adrian had searched for a connection he never expected, only to find someone who taught him what a true partnership meant. Together they proved that destiny could open a door, but only choice could decide what waited beyond it.